over the last 20 years, since we last had what we call the Habitat 2, and then extrapolating to the next 20 years, what should we be concerned about? Next slide, please. Now, this shows the process by which we normally do our reports. Usually we have all manner of regional reports, national reports. It's an intense process. And every report, every data has to be carefully looked at because member states can be very sensitive to figures. So this just shows you the process by which the reports were made. And what is the rationale? The rationale for this report is to basically provide evidence on urban areas that have changed since 1996 and to discuss the major trends and forces that will shape these changes over the next 20 years. And we believe that urbanization is a transformative force. Now, many people have different views about rural-urban migration, for instance. For us, the organizing principle is that you cannot stop people from moving wherever they want to go to. And therefore, the best approach is to plan for urbanization and to ensure that urbanization does not happen in a chaotic manner. And therefore, when we say urbanization here, we are talking about sustainable urbanization. When urbanization is properly done, it becomes a force for economic growth. This report also reviews progress in the implementation of the Habitat Agenda and also the MDGs. Next slide. Let's take the issues in turn. First is housing. What had been the fate of housing over the last 20 years? For some reason, housing has not been as central to the discussion in international development circles, and we have therefore tried very hard to bring housing back to the center stage of the discussion. Why is that so? Because the people who have the power to shape international discussions, they have solved the problem of housing. When you go to Europe, in broad terms, when you go to Europe, you go to the United States, housing is not the most burning issue. The most burning issues probably for them are congestion, climate change, and so forth. Therefore, the energy and the mechanism to provide affordable housing had not been as much discussed as it had been. So we are trying to bring back housing, and we are trying to bring back the notion of upgrading of slums. Slums, as we describe it in UN Habitat, is the physical manifestation of poverty. Many of you know that although we have been reducing the incidence of slums, in aggregate terms, nothing much has actually changed. And you can see there the number of people and the percent of people living in slums. Although they reduce in percentage terms, but because there's population growth in aggregate numbers, there's still a lot that we have to do. Next slide. The next issue that has engaged discussion over the last 20 years, in fact, the 2012 report that I produced as a director when I was monitoring and monitoring and research division, was on what we call the urban divide. And this speaks to the inequality that has developed in our cities. There are opportunities, but opportunities are not given to all. As you can see here, today, more than 20 years ago, opportunities across diverse spaces, countries, cities continue to elude many people. Inequalities in terms of Gini coefficient has gone up. In Africa, it's about 0.45%, and you know the measures of inequality. We use Gini. We also use what we call the MPI, Multidimensional Poverty Index, to measure inequality. So basically, has been another big issue that countries need to take account of. How cities, on the one hand, you have gated communities, you have the rich on one side, you have the poor on another side. And we all know the implications of divided cities. Usually it's criminality, all manner of, tensions. People spend inordinate amount of money to provide protection for themselves. And this we wish will change in the next 20 years. Next slide, please. Exclusion. And also this is part of what we have put in the narrative of inequality. Cities have failed to make sustainable space for everybody. And in terms of space, we are talking about, open public space, for instance. For instance, I'll give you an example. When you go to a typical European city, the percentage of space devoted to streets and public space is about 35 to 40%. When you come to our own environment, it's about 15 to 20% in the best of our cities like Abuja. When you go to a typical slum, our so-called ghettos and degraded areas, the percentage of space devoted to ordinary road that passes through them is between 1.2 to 2%. We actually carried out a big survey over so many cities across the world. We have the report on our website if you want to take a look at them. And apart from the fact that these are root causes of congestion and traffic congestion, for instance, there are also root causes why people die. For instance, if you have a place where there's no access to ambulance and there's fire incidents, people die. So the provision of public space is not a luxury. Provision of green spaces, and I'm very happy to see the beautiful environment we have, it's not a luxury. We still have not come to terms with the health notion and the health implications of having green environment. There's segregation among cities also is a major problem that we found in our analysis. Residents are segregated along ethnic, along income lines, and all of these reports cut across all regions of the world. And as you can see here, what is that leads to high rates of gender disparity, living conditions, social exclusion and marginalization, and of course, inevitably, it leads to crime. Now, the next issue is environmental degradation. This I don't have to say too much about it. Solid waste management dominates municipal annual budgets when they are actually budgeted for. Between 30 to 50% in middle-income countries are devoted to solid waste management. And this has huge implications for demand for both water and energy, which of course is going to grow. It has implications also for climate change. We are putting a lot of effort to ensure that our cities are clean. Solid waste management is an area where the urban area has, we need to put a lot more effort. I'm summarizing tons and tons of pages of research in one page. When you see the main report, you'll be able to see the amount of effort that have been devoted to practical examples, cases, and so forth from all regions of the world. Now, the next issue that had been important and that should engage our attention over the next 20 years is urban governance and legislation. We've had decentralization in Nigeria. Well, Nigeria is one of the few countries, of course, where you don't have mayors. Our local governments are designated sometimes as urban areas, but we have huge political problems which I don't want to go into in that particular designation. And therefore, also in looking at legislation and governance, we also have inefficient or impracticable legislative reforms, which has not served our cities well. There are hidden powers, for instance, that we have not used. I give you an example. the City of London, between 2013 and 2014, the parking fees for the City of London, not the Borough of London, not Hackney, not Greenwich, not others, from the figures we had, parking alone was $1.2 billion, pounds, parking, not the congestion fees. There are several other property fees, for instance. You wonder why our cities don't have money to run their cities. When you wait for annual budgets every year, it's not surprising that our cities are the way they are. Lagos State has demonstrated some, equity in dealing with this issue, and we are putting forth some of these proposals. We are not advocating for multiple taxation that is negative. We are looking at the hidden revenues that cities can design. For instance, there is a county in our own, where we stay in Kenya, called Kiambu. We designed for them, for instance, a municipal finance mechanism. They double their revenue, IGR, within 9 months. And from the figures, because we are monitoring them, what we are seeing for this year coming, this was 2014, is set again to double. So there are a lot of leakages in our cities through lack of municipal finance capacity that are available to make the lives of our people better. And we are going to be urging countries, municipal governments, and cities to follow through with some of these processes. And therefore, we believe that a city that plans well is a city that is livable. There was a survey that was carried out recently called the Lottery of Life. And people from 120 countries were asked, 120 cities were asked to rank the cities where they would like to live in the most and the cities where they don't want to live in the most. It's like a lottery. Suppose you were in a lottery, you don't know where the probabilities will fall into. And it was so depressing for us to find that 4 cities in Nigeria were at the very bottom, where people feel they don't want to ever be born into. They were ranking very closely with Somalia, Mogadishu, and Nagesa. People, when they say, where do you like to be born? Suppose you have a choice in this lottery of life. Of course, everybody chose Vienna, Geneva. They chose a huge compensation. Urban economics, or good, a city that is well designed, that is run by proper laws, will give room for good formal employment, will close the inequality gap. It will also generate high rates of GDP. So, just to recap, a city that will run well must be well planned and planned in advance. A city must anticipate the rural-urban dynamics. It must be run by clear legal framework. We are not talking about having 180 laws. When we looked at the most successful cities like Vienna, Geneva, all the laws that are running those cities are no more than 10. But they are enforced. They are strongly enforced. The key is enforcement. And the key is that everyone understands those rules that guide a city. Now, let me quickly, please go to the next slide. So the key messages, which I'm just summarizing, is that, there has to be a very intense consideration of planning purpose. We need to devote more time to plan ahead, to plan to scale, to plan to the context. Cities are diverse in the way they are organized. When we go, for instance, to help map countries, we map them along city lines. The most dense cities, the most populated cities, cities above 100 million, a million, below 1 million, between 500,000. And when you look at those cities in those terminologies, you see huge diversities across Africa, even across our own country. They have a variety of density, heterogeneity, and we can make use of the context of those cities to design them in a just way for them to be sustainable. This is one of the key messages we find over the last 20 years. The second key message is about good laws, good quality urban laws. Laws that are predictable, laws that ensure that people can invest without fear. One of the reasons investors don't come to Nigeria is that they said our rules are not clear to them. People are afraid. They said they have a law today, tomorrow everything can change. We have to keep in place institutions that will endure, that no matter who comes there, no matter the government, the laws remain the laws of the country. These laws, if they are predictable, will ensure investment, economic performance, wealth creation, and prosperity. This is coming from summaries of all the research we have done over hundreds of cities. I give you an example that my executive director likes to give. Manhattan was designed in the laws, and the urban planning of Manhattan was in 1811. Though that planning law gave the right of 40% of public space to Manhattan. It's one of the most expensive pieces of real estate in the world. What has made it so is that the rules had been respected. No matter who you are, you carry fire on your head, you can't touch the laws. You can't touch the open space. You can't change the streets. You can't remove where the library, New York Library is. You can't do it. This is what makes the US dollar to be the most stable currency in the world. Why? Because the rules are respected and the rules are predictable. And just to be a bit political, this is why Donald Trump can never win. Because they know that at the end of the day, they cannot have someone who is going to do crazy things. At the end of the day, they know that what makes them great is that people can bring their investment there based on certain rules in the city of New York, Chicago, wherever. That when they say these are the rules will be respected. This is the problem we face in developing countries, not just in Nigeria. And we are saying that for our cities to become prosperous and be magnets for investors, we have to begin to ensure that our rules are predictable, our rules are transparent and known to everyone. These are the things we found from the most successful cities in the world. Key message number 3 basically is that the new urban agenda that will be agreed in Quito in October, we are committing to, as we've always done, to ensure that this new urban agenda is actually presented in ways that everyone will understand. It will constitute a framework for national planning. As you see on the box on the other side, these are some of the expectations that it will be engaging, it will be a paradigm shift, it will reinforce urbanization and development, it will transform urbanization as a tool for development, and it will make our cities sustainable places to live in. Next slide, please. Now, one other issue that I would like to bring to our attention is the convergence between the new urban agenda, which we are proposing here in this report, and the 2030 report, Agenda for Sustainable Development. For the first time in the United Nations, a specific SDG has been devoted to the cities, SDG number 11. There are 17 of them. We worked as UN Habitat and partners on SDG number 11, which was eventually accepted. And we can use that to raise funds. One of the things that have not been clear to our own policymakers Our lack of engagement in international community has deprived us of so much. There are countries in Asia now who are getting so much funding, so much support already from just trying to mainstream the SDG 2030. The New Urban Agenda will give clear principles which we'll be happy to discuss with all our stakeholders, especially yourself. Let me please go to the next slide. This is just a summary of what we have been saying. Go to the next slide. I want to just, in a few slides, is that it? Where's the other one? Where's the Nigerian example? I want to show just a few slides on how does it translate to our country. What has it meant in the last 20 years for our country? Please go ahead. Now, our key assumption and research we have done, if you go to our website, you see a series of studies that I was leading on structural transformation and urbanization, structural transformation and industrialization and so forth. There are three very key factors that converge very strongly. One is urbanization, the second is industrialization, and the third one is economic growth. They all go hand in hand together. In the past, it has not been the practice for people to associate this together. Normally, urban planners focus on the planning side, the technology people, they focus almost solely on the technology and industrialization side, and the other people focus on other things. What we have found from using big data to actually correlate these three variables is as follows. Those who have been doing structural transformation equations, you will understand that sustainable urbanization and sustainable industrialization, they go hand in hand. And they both lead to rising living standards. When that happens, you find the following. Positive structural transformation is accompanied by the following. One, that particular economy, that particular country will begin to realize a declining share of agriculture in GDP and employment. When you look at the data from the UN and the World Bank today, in some countries you see have 80% of employment in agriculture. It has stayed the same for 30 years. It simply shows you that economy is not transforming. That country is not making much progress. Agriculture can be transformed into a modern force. Agriculture is extremely important, but agriculture cannot remain the same that it was 40 years ago in a particular country. That country will be poor. Number two, rural-urban migration and increase in natural urban growth, they are the forces that contribute to what we call urbanization. But they have to be done in a way that is sustainable. When people move from rural to urban areas, they must move with certain things in mind, and I will say in a moment. Now, the third thing that happens when you have positive structural transformation is there will be a rise of a modern industrial and service economy. The US didn't have internet until 1995 at a commercial level. We seem to forget that internet was only just 20 years ago. It's like it's been there forever. Of course, the US military had something close to internet maybe 10 years before then. Individuals didn't have their laptops 30 years ago. When you look at a modern economy, you see a gradual shift in the way equipments are used. You have a drop in the prices of the most sophisticated equipment. I saw a report 2 days ago. In 5 years' time, solar energy will be far cheaper than actually nuclear power. The price of solar energy equipment is dropping so quickly. But what do we find in our country? Nobody's paying attention. We are neither paying attention to research, nor the adoption, nor the diffusion of such sustainable technologies. If you read, even in the normal papers, you see this quarrel between the United Kingdom and some Chinese company who want to build nuclear plant in the UK. And the bone of contention for the most conservative of those groups is that nuclear power will be even more expensive than solar in another 5 years. Now, why am I saying this? I'm saying this because economies, urbanization, sectors, they all change in tandem. The composition of our rural and urban, they change in tandem with progress that is made by society. There's no distinction between them. And the fourth thing that you find is that you begin to have high rates of birth because health system is getting better and so forth. And then the most important for us is that productivity must grow. And productivity grow on account of people being trained. Not just formal education alone, but also crafts, technical education. This is what we have not been seeing in our country. People move from villages to the cities without the requisite skills. So they end up in slums. They move to the cities without the avenue for factories to manufacture. That is why things are so expensive. That's why suddenly oil price dropped from $100 to $40. Nigeria, as the president says, has become suddenly poor. For me, this is not the optimum situation we should find ourselves in. As a country with so blessed, with so many intellectuals. And what we have done is to place this within the context of urbanization, industrialization, and economic growth. When you look at this graph, we did a series of studies for several countries. We have this graph for almost all African countries. The line I want you to pay attention to is the manufacturing. It has remained stagnant for almost 30 years in Nigeria. Which means we are not producing what we are wearing, what we eat, what we drink, talk less of even exporting them. Now, cities are supposed to be the locus of production. So for us, we tie in these two together. We must make our cities a place where people can produce, people can get rich, where rising standards can be observed over time. So we see agriculture, it was almost the same for a while. That period there coincides with when additional came. There was some slight improvement. But what we are saying is that agriculture must be a business. It must be modernized. We cannot neglect agriculture. We have to have agriculture, industry, and manufacturing going together. Nigeria has no business relying on oil. If we have done what we need to do, I saw a figure the other day. Clothing and garment in South Africa alone last year was $20 billion. 20 billion clothing and garment. And this is the same with, you go to China, you go to other countries where they've diversified their economy. We need to have urbanization, industrialization, and economic growth coming in tandem. Let's look at the next slide. So what have you observed in terms of urbanization and structural change in our country? Agriculture recorded the largest share in terms of contribution to GDP, but this is another strange phenomenon which we found in all of African countries: services. Please look closely at the red line there. Service recorded the positive growth rate and the highest contribution to GDP over a particular period. But the danger is that Nigeria has been skipping manufacturing at the expense of services. Now, services represent the highest phase of growth from agriculture, industry to services. But the kind of service industry we are having is not the type of service that you have in Boston or in Silicon Valley. It's not a place where you have a dense agglomeration of computer scientists, software people. This is the one that they have attained to. This is not where we are. We don't even manufacture SIM cards. I stand to be corrected. I don't know whether that's correct. The service industry that had raised the growth and living standards of people in the United States. When you go to Route 128 in Boston, or you go to Silicon Valley, those kinds of services are the ones which you attain, and we have the people. We need to create the environment for our scholars, our students to be, if you create this kind of hall, divide it into 4 places, and simply just put high-band internet, hire them out to young people, you'll be surprised what you will do in 1 year. And I live in Nairobi. There is a corridor when you are going to the airport. There are some Indians where they just open building with glass like this. When they were building, I used to wonder, what are they doing here? One day I stopped my driver and said, I want to go see what's happening here. And there were almost 8 of them along that road. When they finished, I realized what they were doing. They have high fiber optics connection, high internet connectivity. The space was taken up within 6 months. When you come to our country, I always wonder, what is it about us that we see all of this? Their urban areas are being transformed into places of innovation, places where young people find jobs. Because many young people can't find the money to go and be hiring their own, building their own houses and so forth. Just provide the environment for them. So the services we are seeing is not the services we should desire for. The services where young people are just running around selling SIM card on the road and so forth, and then when it comes into the data statistics, services had risen in Nigeria. Every phone is imported. Everything we import. All the service industry, everything is imported. The ones where others are making money, tourism and so forth, is hardly developed in our country. So I'm calling attention to as a Nigerian, that we need to look at the figures closely, but more important, look at the activities that are giving rise to these figures more closely. And this shows, again, I used Nigerian figure for 2015. You see service industry in the first quarter of 2015, 50-something, 50-something, and whereas you find industry is low and agriculture is even lower. Now, if agriculture is low on account of modernization, it will be understandable. But it is low because even agriculture, we are not paying attention to it. So this figure we are seeing here does not show any modicum of progress for us. Next slide. So what have been the implication? Nigeria is experiencing structural unemployment, as you can see from there. And unemployment rate is about 7 times population growth rate in Nigeria in the last couple of years, because we have relied too much on petroleum extraction and processing. We have relied on it because they are not helping us, because they are enclave, what we call enclave economy. They are localized within certain places, where if somebody chooses to bomb the whole place, that's the end of the economy. Manufacturing is far more diverse. Manufacturing is spread all over the country, and it doesn't respect any barriers. It has also led to high youth unemployment. Let's go to the next slide. I have 2 or 3 more slides. Now, another important area that we need to pay attention in our urban transformation is informal economy. No less than 50% of global workforce is there, fine. But in our studies, and please go to UN Habitat website, you find the details of all these studies. There are colleagues, both international development experts and so forth, who are always having a romantic view of informal economy. The informal economy should be a face in the development of a country. You cannot wish it away. You can't get rid of it because you want to, but you have to transform it. This is our message. Because what you find in all our correlation is that informal sector economy tend to be growth reducing. They are actually growth reducing. In other words, when majority of your people are working at such a low level with very low skill, with low techniques of manufacturing, it drags down the rest of the economy. And this was not just for Nigeria, it's for almost all the countries we found over 20 years. So we need to transform the informal economy. We need to change the way our cities are configured, because productivity in those sectors are very, very low. They are the margins of society, they are the margin of our cities, and the cost to them is high. When you are poor, living in slums, it's very likely your children will.
Focal point, Kogi State. I want to thank Professor OOO for that wonderful presentation. And my comment is on the first person who made an observation on the downward trend of the economy, whereby state governments are owing salaries. It's about the whole nation. Yes, the oil industry has crashed. The first time I learned that America was not going to buy our oil again, fear gripped me. But then again, I took it positively. It's not a matter for us to be lamenting about. I think we should see the opportunities in it. After all, we have been making so much noise about diversification of the economy. To me, this is the right time. And when anything looks so negative, there is always a positive thing that can come out of it. So it's a time for the national government and the state governments to look inward and see what they can take from within and cushion the effect of this crashing economy, sustain it, and then the nation as a whole will come out of a dependent economy whereby we import almost everything. To me, this is the right time. Looking at climate change as another example, when it was here afresh, fear gripped everybody because we were just looking at the negative the impacts alone. But I tell you today, there are so many things to gain from the climate change phenomenon that we cushion the impacts, not just the negative side, but also the positive. We can move forward as a state and as a nation despite all odds. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think the first comment was more of comments. It wasn't much of a question. The second intervention was on data. And I believe that it's really up to us. I see that in the last few years, Nigerian Bureau of Statistics has really improved on its data collection, and we can also work with them on other aspects. We'll be happy to work with the university, for instance, on on this sort of issue. But after almost 60 years of independence, it's in our hands. I think we have nobody else to blame. But one source of area that we have tapped into in the UN is national census. You'll be surprised how much you can find in national census. Most national census, they are hardly utilized 10-15%. So we use census of nations to do most of what we do actually. For instance, for the slum data, we use our software to simply cobble together all the different categories that countries don't pay much attention to. Most times census are just political, they make political statements and they are put aside. But we now take them and we use them all across the nation. So that's another source. But for the specific scientific data that you mentioned, I think we just need to invest in them. We work a lot with small countries like Rwanda. I don't know how many of you have been to Kigali and the other cities recently, or even to Ethiopia. both of them are least developed countries. And the way things are going, on the index of development, they will far outpace Nigeria. Yeah, simply because they have leadership that are, dedicated to development. Ethiopia now has the first urban rail transport. They have first in almost everything. You go to all the 4 cities, they are like construction sites. People say, oh, you can't build house because of mortgage. But there are mechanisms by which you can actually do mortgage, even for the low income people. When you come to our country, you just get into all sorts of arguments with bureaucrats and people. So it's up to us to really push the boundaries. So, especially for data. Then the third comment on manufacturing, as you may observe, I said manufacturing, but I didn't go to the root causes. Of course, power is a major cause. And of course, lack of a clear industrial policy is another cause. I agree with you that, we need to really change the way we do things. Having 6-7% manufacturing contribution to GDP after almost 40 years is really a disgrace for our country. And then you raise the issue of rural-urban. Of course, there are three methods by which you describe whether a place is urban or rural. The first, of course, is the migration category. The second is natural birth. People give birth in cities and so forth, and both in rural. The third one is simply by the law. For instance, in the Nigerian constitution, the capital of every local government is an urban area. That is the designation. But in the UN, countries are allowed to define rural or urban by themselves. If you go to Uganda, for instance, by numbers, Uganda can say any settlement that has no more than, or that's more than 5,000 people is an urban area. You go to China, maybe you need 1 million. So they have left that definition in terms of numbers to nations, because member states own the United Nations. But one very simple criteria that you can apply is the governance system, whether you have a governance system in that particular settlement, and of course the infrastructure, where you have urban basic services like water, power, sanitation. So that is how we look at them. We use we have the table for almost all countries, how they define their rural urban areas. But it's very important that when you have an urban settlement, it has a proper governance system, whether it's mayor or local government chair or something, and of course the key infrastructure, water, power, and so forth. The last, Ms. Odio's question was on diversification. To be honest with you, I wish we never found oil. I'm sure Nigeria will have been far better than we are now, seriously. But we have countries that have oil, but you hardly know. Malaysia is an exporter of oil. The US will become a net exporter of oil in the next 5 years. That's why they don't buy our oil anymore. It doesn't mean they will go down. Norway has managed its oil very well. Alaska has managed their oil very well. Oil is a very tricky business. If you don't have strong rules and institutions, it's one of the most corrupting sectors in the world. But at the end of the day, we can talk all we want. It's about our own change of mind. You also mentioned climate change. The impact of climate change is most devastating wherever you have infrastructure deficits. I don't know whether you watch what happened in Haiti and Argentina 2-3 years ago. Argentina recovered within 3, 4, 5 months because they have the sort of infrastructure and the human capacity to deal with it. Haiti is still stuck. We still have our staff there. There are still IDPs there. But if you already have some major infrastructure that will, like simple culverts, simple drainage system, you tend to reduce the impact of climate change, especially flooding. And of course, governance and rules. We tell people, don't build on flood plains. They will be begging you that, please let me build on that place. I remembered something, I was talking to a commissioner Don't let me mention the state now. And the fellow was lamenting to me. They had a flood, and they went to take the people away from the place. So I was interviewed, and he said, do you know this conversation I just had with these people? The man, his house was almost taken away by flood. And they were telling them, we have to relocate you. He was begging, he was bribing the commissioner. He said, no, let me stay here. So we sometimes, we think we can behave differently and achieve a different result. I'm saying it because not as a UN star, but as a Nigerian. Nigerians will try to do the opposite of what we should do, but they expect a positive outcome. You know, if you say, don't jump a red light, somebody will jump a red light and he will be praying that he won't get hit by another car. So I don't know what we are going to do in that respect of human regulation and human behavior. But I believe that both at the political level, leadership, and ourselves, that is where our greatest challenge is. Thank you very much.
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we've now come to the heart of the matter as I invite those on the high table to please step over here as we join the chief presenter, our royal father, the Oshemawe of Ondo Kingdom, Oba Dr. Victor Kiladejo.
On behalf of Federal University of Technology, Akure, as well as the UN Habitat, I hereby present this book titled Urbanization and Development, the Emerging Futures to the public. I will want to drop something on behalf of the Council of Obas on those states, being the chairman of the Council of Obas, and because of my special interest in the Afri-cities. Before mentioning my donation, I want to bring it to the notice of the House that I represented the Nigerian Obas in Afri-Cities 2012 in Senegal. where I presented a paper on the role of traditional institutions in the governance of cities in Africa. Because of that my interest, I wish to launch this book with the sum of 2 million naira.
Thank you very much, His Royal Highness. We may go back to our respective seats as because of time, we are going to compress two things. I will invite some dignitaries. They will deliver short goodwill messages as well as launch the report on behalf of their respective organizations, institutions, or government. First on our list is Mr. Ibrahim Adoga, Special Advisor to the Governor of Kogi State. I hereby invite him to the podium.
Thank you very much. In acknowledging protocols, let me borrow from the words I've learned from FUTA, especially from the registrar of FUTA. The super strategic vice chancellor of FUTA. I think I'm going to import that to Kogi, where we call our governor digital governor, and we'll now refer to him as the super strategic digital governor of Kogi State. The ever versatile academic and absolutely brilliant Director, Regional Office, UN Habitat, Professor Oyeyinka Oyelana. Representative of the Honorable Minister of Education, Representative of the Honorable Minister Works, Housing and Lands, Representative of His Excellency, the Governor of Ondo State, our real fathers, I plead to stand on the existing protocols. As you are well aware, Kogi State is a kindergarten state compared to Ondo State. However, we are relieved that we can catch up very well, very fast, and very quickly with Ondo State. Because Ondo has existed for so long, but Kogi is going to be 25 on August 27th. We have a governor that is 41-year-old, and we have a cabinet that ranks around 32, 33, 35. Our goal in Kogi State is not to see ourselves as an urban state for now. We look at ourselves as a rural state. Within the next 10 years, or rather, within the tenure allowable by the Constitution of the Federal Republic, which is 8 years for the administration of His Excellency, the Executive Governor of Kogi State, Alhaji Yahaya Doza Bello, we look forward to being ranked as the most efficient and the most strategic urban state in Nigeria. We did not come to FUTA by accident. It is a process. UN Habitat team, we started downloading their knowledge in the last 3 days. Unfortunately, we were only able to download about 20%. We have followed them to Ondo to continue the process of downloading and dredging their brains. We have gotten to about 30%. By the time we're leaving here and allowing them to go back to Kenya reluctantly, we would have been able to sync their knowledge with what we have seen in FUTA. We have seen a brilliant and very well organized school, institution. We have seen a team of school administrators. The auditorium reminds me of my college in the UK. Kogi State is moving along the lines of specific strategies. We will try to put together a state that is built on plans, or built on structures, and built on processes. And that is why the first thing His Excellency has put in place is the civil service reforms. As you are aware, prior to his coming as governor, Kogi was virtually ruled by ghost workers. We have been able to successfully enable the permanent resting place of about 8,000 ghost workers in Kogi State as we speak. And it is a continuous process. We will continue to fish out fraudulent practices in the civil service in Kogi State. We will continue to strengthen governance, good governance in Kogi State. It is our determination to lift our people from the dredges of poverty. This will be built on economic development based on sustainable agriculture. This will be built on our ability to harness our various mining resources, the reinvigoration of the Ajaokuta steel process for industrialization. However, we believe that development can only come from individual development. According to the SSG of Kogi State, if you are not current, you cannot be correct. It is only when you flow with 21st century and possibly 22nd century potentials and dreams and visions. That is the only way you can get to where you're going. Kogi State is bordered by 10 states of the Federation, and we are going to ensure that Kogi State is at the heart of development in Nigeria. I want to thank the FUTA team for their hospitality since we arrived last night. As you are aware, this is the era of change, and it is the era of practical change. I am not sure I would like to expose my governor, who even though has personal wealth, to issues of donation in public. I know His Royal Majesty, the way he looks, is a very, very, I even admire his swag. We will donate, but I think we'll do that very quietly to support the program. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. I'd like to recognize the presence of Architect Jide Olajuigbe, Honorable Commissioner for Education, Ondo State. You are welcome, sir. I'd like to invite Chief Ayo Abiola, Honorable Commissioner for Commerce and Industries, and the Supervising Commissioner for Environment, Ondo State, who is representing Dr. Olusegun Rahman Mimiko, to deliver a short goodwill message as well as launch the book on behalf of the Ondo State government. A round of applause for him, please.
Mr. Chairman, the Vice Chancellor, University FUTA, Akure, our own FUTA. The Chief Presenter, UN Habitat, I must appreciate you on behalf of Iroko, Dr. Olusegun Mimiko, members of the High Table, representative of His Excellency, the Governor of Kogi State, and representative of the ministers, you are welcome. My colleague, the Honorable Commissioner for Education, you are welcome, sir. The Kabiyesi, Chairman Council of Obas Ondo State, Oba Kiladejo, sir. Standing on behalf of Dr. Olusegun Abayomi Mimiko, the Iroko of our time, his message, sir, he will have been here, but for an urgent assignment and standing on the existing protocol on his behalf. I have here with me also members of the team of Ministry of Environment. I will say, in response to the presentation of the Chief Presenter, that what we have today may not be our own making and maybe possibly not what we thought would be. The particular one that caught my attention was the issue of emphasis now on services overtaking industrialization. Industrialization is expected to be the bedrock and naturally should have been the source of demand for service. But where you now have service without the industries to serve, then we have a great lacuna in the area of development. And naturally, more people will be visiting the cities and there will be nothing they will be doing. If we have more people in the city looking for white-collar jobs that are not there, definitely devil will find a beautiful thing for them to do. And this is why maybe that we are having so many social verses in the cities. We are very there in the area of zero oil. And my ministry, Ministry of Commerce and Industry, we were looking at a situation where we also have zero federal allocation. Maybe it will be a blessing if we finally find ourselves there. Because personally, I'm convinced that it may possibly lead to an era of self-actualization. Maybe we'll be able to look inward as presented and rediscover ourselves. If you know that you have to survive by what you're able to do, and not because on monthly basis an allocation will come, and all we have to do is to look for where we will spread it, then definitely Nigeria will stand up at that level. Most of the countries with reference, that were referenced, they were countries that woke up and realized that they had no choice but to fend for themselves. And here in Ondo State, to some extent, we are smarting up towards this area. Without going deeply into this, sir, reading a bit of what I have from the governor, without taking much of it, I will say, I'm delighted as his representative to be here. And of course, his greeting is to FUTA. It takes the deep to call out to the deep, is what the Bible says. What we have today being the handiwork of FUTA is because FUTA has it. You cannot give what you don't have. FUTA really showed what they have in terms of how they successfully manage the environment. You will enter the environment of FUTA and you'll be happy you are within a modern day university. I'm really proud to be here, really. I was saying this while I was coming, and the PS of the Ministry of Environment, Architect Gray Eshofone, that look at it. I will not mention my own university. As I was there recently, I'm not so proud when compared to the environment we have here. This government, at inception in 2009, had a pain. I'm aware of this, that Dr. Olusegun Obimiko personally had this pain. And the pain was how from 2009 are we going to manage the environment we find ourselves in such a way that in 2017 at our exit that we will be leaving it a better place than we met it. And this called for so many things that we have put in place. Except we have visitors in our midst. Yes, the special advisor to the executive governor, Kogi State, mentioned Ondo State as a brother, senior, older. Yes, we are 40 years plus. And definitely we cannot afford to be a fool at 40. And this explains some of the things we have put in place. At deception, Arakale was a chaotic environment. We have the drainage system that was begging for action. And we immediately went to town. That what do we do? The governor said, let us identify the space we have. As a plan for man-environment interaction, we identify our state, Ondo State, as a space. The people within that environment and their different nuances, what they represent, their culture, and finally the environment itself as an umbrella. What do we do? And this explains some historic things that we have decided to put in place. One of them was the key program we call Urban Renewal System. Under the Urban Renewal System, we had the neighborhood market. We replanned the primary education system. Of course, the latest, apart from road drainages and their appurtenances, the new constructions was the market. Recognizing the fact that you need to have market as part of the urban system. And it is in view of this that we have done most of what we have done, especially in Akure and the key cities Ondo, Owo, Ikare. Ladies and gentlemen, information is also essential. And this was where we put in what we call the CDC, Data Capture Center. And the popular one you hear, Kadigbeayo. Most people may not know what this stands for. And also in the area of industrialization, most people may not know. We realized this urban drift and the need to spread. And that's why we started the Ore Industrial Center. Ore Industrial City currently sits on 400 hectares with 30 megawatts power plants. These are some of the things we have put in place to ensure that we ensure a spread. At this point, I want to say that we appreciate what FUTA has done, and Mr. Governor has sent his message that definitely we get to the VC very, very soon. I thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, sir. In accordance with protocol, I'd like to quickly invite TPL Taiwo, PB Taiwo, Controller, Federal Ministry of Works and Housing, who is representing the Triple Barrel Minister, Mr. Raji Fashola, Honorable Minister of Works, Housing and Power.
Thank you so much. I want to introduce myself once again as Town Planner PB Taiwo, the Controller, Federal Minister of Power, Works and Housing, Ondo State. But I'm representing the Honorable Minister of Power, Works and Housing, who is honorably absent, and he has graciously requested and directed that I should represent him on this occasion. So I have the honor and the privilege to say a goodwill message on this launch with emphasis on World Cities Report 2016, but emphasis on urbanization and development, the emerging futures. There's no doubt about it. Urbanization and development has always been evolving. Challenges must come, whether we like it or not. Emerging futures is loaded. Loaded in times of challenges. And the challenges must bring solutions. And there's no doubt about it that we are here to solve problems. We are here to bring solutions to challenges that may be emerging. And that's where we are all happy to be here together and to identify with this talk that has been given today. I must not forget to congratulate the FUTA community under the able leadership of the Vice Chancellor, Professor A.G. Daramola, in conjunction with the UN Habitat, through the Director Regional Office for Africa, UN Habitat, Professor Oyebamji Oyedina Oyeyinka, for opening our eyes once again to this. It's not that the problems will not be there or are not there, but this talk has brought out to us a frontier, a new frontier upon which we can rest or bring out solutions to the likely emerging futures that we have. Because of time, I've been told to be brief, but by and large, I have to mention one or two things. This ministry, that is the Ministry of Power, Works and Housing, has always been in the forefront of taking the challenges of urbanization and development. No doubt about it, over the years, to ensure that whatever the challenges that may be evolving, there will be practical solutions or practical and pragmatic approaches to it. And I would not like to bore us, but to mention that our ministry, or this ministry I'm representing, is happy that this new frontier is taking place here today, and FUTA is being chosen to be that with the opportunity of giving that leeway for such a new program. Thank you. And lastly, I want to mention this. I may not be able to do the launching very well. I'm a civil servant. I don't want to underestimate my ministry, neither do I want to overestimate. The one thing I just want to mention is this, that I will present this matter as a feedback system to my minister, who has authorized me to be here, on what to be done as regards the launch. As time goes on, I will get across to the Vice Chancellor on whatever response I obtain from my ministry. God bless you.
A round of applause before our last dignitary and our supervising ministry. I'd like to recognize the presence of Alayelua Oba Adebayo Adewole OFR Owa Ajero of Ijero Kingdom, Ekiti State. A round of applause for him. Kabiyesi. I'd like to now invite Mrs. Rekia Gambo Ilyasu, Deputy Director, Federal Ministry of Education, the representative of Malam Adamu, the Honorable Minister of Education, for the last word today.
His Excellency, the Executive Governor of Ondo State, Dr. Olusegun Rahman Mimiko, CON, ably represented, His Excellency, the Executive Governor of Kogi State, Malam Yahaya Bello, ably represented, Honorable Minister of Power, Works and Housing, Mr. Babatunde Rajifashola, ably represented. The Director, UN Habitat Regional Office for Africa, Professor Oyebanji Oyelaron Oyeyinka, our own CVC, Vice Chancellor, Federal University of Technology, Akure, Professor Adebi Gregory Daramola. Your Royal Highness, Oba Victor Kiladejo, the Oshemawe of Ondo Land. I salute you, sir. And our Royal Highness, the Ajero of Ijero Ikiti. You are welcome, sir. Other Vice Chancellors, we have the Vice Chancellor of Adekule Ajasi University and other heads of tertiary institutions here. Our principal officers of Federal University of Technology, Akure, I salute you all. Members of staff and students of the Federal University of Technology, Akure, ladies and gentlemen of the press, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I stand here this morning to represent the Honorable Minister of Education, Malam Adamu, who is unavoidably absent due to the exigencies of his office. He has directed me to present his address, and it goes this way. Thank you. It is my singular honor and a great pleasure to be here at the Federal University of Technology, Akure, on this auspicious occasion of the launching of United Nations Human Settlements Program, UN Habitat World Cities Report 2016. I felicitate with and commend the Federal University of Technology, Akure, for being the first university in Nigeria and indeed in Africa to host the launching of this all-important report with the theme Urbanization and Development, Emerging Futures. This is a demonstration of the responsiveness of the university to contemporary issues and its sensitivity to the need for timely and accurate information on the issues that ensure the sustainability of our cities. More so, as they have become clusters to which many rural dwellers gravitate, and the consequent implications for sustainability of the cities in the 21st century. The importance of planned urbanization to national development cannot be overemphasized. In nation building, the nature of urbanization plays a major role in shaping the national economic growth and development. In most developing countries, urbanization is not regulated, but rather ad hoc, and Nigeria is not an exception. The present government is aware of the issues connected to ad hoc urbanization, and that is why Mr. President is working assiduously to address the problem. Nigeria has come a long way in urban development, and there is therefore need to create a new urban agenda that will give our cities the ability to prepare for the challenges that are associated with urbanization. As pointed out in the report, many cities, even in our dear nation, are unprepared for the consequences of urbanization. The Minister of Works, Housing and Power has been mandated by Mr. President to aggressively embark on programs that drastically deal with the challenges of urbanization by reducing the number of slums in our urban areas. Today, as we launch the World Cities Report 2016 here in the Federal University of Technology, Akure, we are proud to join the world to take stock of our urban development. This is part of the efforts to begin the process of preparations for Habitat 3, and the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development that will be decided upon during the Habitat 3 conference in Quito, Ecuador in October 2016. As this event is expected to integrate the notion of urban prosperity with the social, economic, and environmental dimension of sustainability in order to create vibrant and sustainable cities that can meet the demands and challenges of the 21st century. It is hoped that the Nigerian education sector, particularly the Faculty of Environmental Studies, will play its role well in attaining these goals through research, review of curriculum, and development of technology to collect relevant up-to-date data and analyze them for proper planning. I therefore charge the Nigerian higher education institutions to collaborate with UN Habitat to play a key role within the context of our nation in formulating and actualizing the new urban agenda, which is expected to enable cities take advantage of the opportunities offered by urbanization and promote cities and human settlements that are environmentally sustainable, resilient, socially inclusive, safe, violence-free, and economically productive. At this juncture, I wish to acknowledge and appreciate Dr. John Claus, the Executive Director of UN Habitat, and his team, colleagues, contributors, and authors for their dedicated effort in producing the 2016 World City Report that demonstrates a vast amount of knowledge on urbanization and development. This detailed report can play a part in informing effective strategies. It is important for me to reiterate the commitment of the present administration, led by President Muhammadu Buhari, to bring change in every aspect of the Nigerian economy, including human habitat. Government will leave no stone unturned in using the instrument of education in identifying and finding real solutions to contemporary urban issues and create innovative and interactive mechanisms to identify the areas of improvement in various levels of governance. It will also ensure provision of tools necessary to begin a systematic movement towards making our cities prosperous as it engages local governments, stakeholders, and decision makers to mobilize appropriate resources that will address the challenges confronting our cities. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, I commend the positive efforts and congratulate the Federal University of Technology again for pioneering the launch of the UN Habitat 2016 World Cities Report in Nigeria. I wish the university, the UN Habitat, stakeholders, and everyone successful deliberation. Thank you all for your attention.
Thank you very much, Ma. I'd like to quickly recognize the presence of Princess Yinka Akoshile, the regent of Oda Kingdom, Ondo State. You are welcome, Ma. Kábíyèsí.
Inú ọdún yìí òde Jésù ṣẹrẹrẹ níwá. Ṣẹrẹrẹ níwá àdúrà máa tilẹ̀kùn ayọ̀ wá o. Dúdáyà wá tòrò. Wẹ̀dáyé ẹ̀mí tòrò. Ṣé bí èjì òwúrọ̀ o. Ìrọ̀wọ́ wá o ọmọ ọ̀la máa mọ́lá fún fèrè. Bá mi o, máa mọ́ lápá fèrè o. ọ̀nà o àkúrẹ́ lómi méjì ọ̀pẹ̀jẹ̀jì lálà àkúrẹ́ lómi méjì ọ̀pẹ̀jẹ̀jì lálà àlà kan ti péré àmọ́ àmọ̀dọ́ mi ọmọ alólè rẹ̀ ọba mi o. Uwa moyaki, uwa moyaki, uwa moyaki, malu pepe aji mekojo, uwa moyaki oye, amalu pepe aji meko, malu pepe aji mekojo, malu pepe aji mekojo.
Thank you very much. A round of applause. A round of applause for the cultural troupe from Akure South local government. A round of applause for them. Thank you very much. Wonderful presentation. Thank you. Thank you very much. Wonderful presentation from Akure South local government. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. A round of applause for them. Akure South local government, kudos. I'd like to quickly invite Professor J.A.B. Olujimi, Dean, School of Environmental Technology, to move the vote of thanks on behalf of our university.
Hello. I would like, before the vote of thanks, to publicly acknowledge the role of UN Habitat and Shelter Afrique in facilitating the provision of hostel accommodation for Nigerian universities. In the first phase, which is the pilot phase of the project, FUTA will be having 5,000 bed accommodation on this campus. So it's a project that is dear to the heart of Professor Oyeyinka, and with his colleagues in Shelter Afrique, it's going to be private sector funded, and we're not going to put in a penny other than the land on which they are going to put the accommodation. Thank you very much.
The Vice Chancellor and the Chairman of the occasion, permit me to stand on the existing protocol already established. We want to sincerely thank God for the occasion of today. It has been awesome and very fantastic. When we talk about cities, cities are regarded as engines of development. But are Nigerian cities performing this role effectively? This calls for concern. and urbanization is inevitable. Therefore, the need now is to actually plan to accommodate the existing urbanization process. On that note, I want to congratulate the Vice Chancellor, who is environmental friendly, and for actually hosting this during your tenure. And we will recall that it is during your tenure that the Department of Urban and Regional Planning was branded the best department of planning in Nigeria. Mr. Vice Chancellor, sir, thank you, and we are very grateful. I equally want to appreciate Professor Oyelakin, the presenter of this World Habitat Report, for actually choosing FUTA to launch this particular report. I'm sure this is the second time in Akure. We met during the time we were celebrating the 4th anniversary of Mimiku's administration. And you did promise that we are going to bring something down to FUTA. Thank you very much. And for the other contribution again, we say thank you. I want to thank our royal fathers here present, Oba Victor Kiladejo Oshemowe of Ondo Kingdom and the Ajero of Ijero for taking time to actually grace this particular occasion. I equally want to express our sincere appreciation to the state governor